Welcome to Untying Knots, Minds and Souls Untethered with Perry Clark. This program looks at mental health from unique perspectives and shows you how to manage your life by finding the knots that help you and stay away from the ones that could be a disadvantage. Now, here is your host, Perry Clark.
Hello all. Welcome back to Untying Knots, Minds and Souls Untethered. I'm Perry Clark, licensed marriage and family therapist. And I'm here with another interesting podcast for you guys to talk about something in a relationship that I don't think we think about too often, even though it's one that has such a major effect on our lives and our general well-being. But before we get to that, I want to also remind everyone that this podcast is for entertainment and education purposes only. This does not constitute working with a licensed mental health provider in your area, so please seek out one that is. And with what we're going to be talking about today, too, there are therapists who work specifically around this subject. So today's guest is an author who is here to talk about a subject around money. Money, which is, we know, always that thing that lifts us up, but also can be a bane of our existence and provides us with so much of our why we're out here working. And our guest here often talks much more about money literacy, but we're also going to go further into that standpoint of where mental health also plays into effect with our money relationship. But for the meantime, let's get our guest in here. And our guest today is Drexwell Seymour, who is a certified public accountant and is the managing partner and founder of HLB TCI accounting firm. Perhaps more importantly, Drexwell is a man on a mission to inspire, encourage, and influence others to overcome setbacks and systematic injustice and to find their purpose in life. To that end, he hosts a YouTube channel and financially speaking, a weekly radio show, and is the author of the international best-selling Rise Up and Take Your Position, as well as the creator of a short film by the same name. Drexwell grew up on a small island in the Turks and Caicos region, where there was limited opportunities and terrible colorism. But he strived and thrived, eventually receiving a full scholarship for a BA in accounting at Wilmington College at the age of 16, and later graduated from Miami College with an MBA in finance. As he grew older, despite his achievements, building a successful accounting firm and a property management company from the ground up, he was haunted through his life by the low self-esteem and lack of confidence that had been instilled while during his childhood. It wasn't within a mere 4 years that he discovered his life purpose, helping others to never feel the way he had been made to feel. Drexwell and his wife, Joanna, live in Turks and Caicos with their 5 children. So, Drexwell, welcome to Untying Knots.
Hi, Mr. Clark. Thank you for having me on your show. I'm delighted and looking forward to this conversation.
I'm glad to have it too, because this is one of those intersections of our mental health that we're dealing with daily, from when we get up in the morning to what we're thinking about when we're going to bed at night is, are we getting the bills paid? Do we have enough for taking care of these things?
Mm-hmm.
And how are we also getting hit with some of our social interactions? But before we get into some of that, let's hear from you. How did you get here beyond what's in your bio?
Well, it's a long story, but we'll talk about that in a minute.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, as I mentioned, I grew up on and I was born in these Turks and Caicos Islands, a very small place. Everybody knew everybody. Because the majority of us are Black here.
Mm-hmm.
However, I grew up, thinking, little of myself because of my dark skin. I felt I was insignificant because of the environment that I grew up in. And so I spent most of my life, thinking that I am inferior. And despite the achievements I have achieved in my life. But now thankfully, 5 years ago now, I have discovered my purpose. And now I'm on a mission really to ensure that other people do not have to suffer as long as I did. So I'm sharing my story with other people.
Very nice. And a bunch of what you've been doing has been dealing with financial literacy. So for those
Absolutely.
who aren't aware of it, what is financial literacy?
Well, basically, financial literacy, when you hear the word literacy, is you think of, education. So basically, is bringing awareness and educating people how to manage their finances in a better position.
Mm-hmm.
And if they don't have any finances, you will teach them about finances so that whenever they get it, they will know how to deal with it. So basically, educating people about finances in general, about
Mm-hmm.
money, how to make money, how to manage money,
Mm-hmm.
and how to save money.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right, because that's again one of the constant practices we're having to deal with day to day, living in the world we live in, especially with the capitalism. But also, I'm kind of curious because I know this gets into the aspects that we deal with in mental health. In that literacy, how do we also talk about the idea of how others might use it against us?
Yes. Well, I mean, the literacy kit, for example, if you are not financial literate, it could be a disadvantage to you. People could
Mm-hmm.
manipulate you. And also, you have to realize, too, that we see all these people out here, all these successful and rich people. Honestly, it's most of them perhaps are rich because of poor people who are just
Mm-hmm.
spending their money on everything they see being advertised, not being conscious of the fact that they need to save this money or manage their money properly. And so it can be used against you. And then you have this mandate from society that you have to have this, you have to have that. And so
Mm-hmm.
you're doing everything you can to try to live up to people, spending everything you have, trying to
Mm-hmm.
please people, live up with the Joneses. And so these are the
Mm-hmm.
type of things
Mm-hmm.
that can be used against you. It's important for you to know who you are. It's important to know your financial condition. And so that's why so if you know your financial condition, you have to control the discipline. You'll be in a position to control the outcome.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. Which is then where one of those areas that comes into mental health is understanding what that financial condition has affected how you've made choices, how you think of yourself. I often say that how we use money is a reflection of our self-esteem as
Oh yeah.
well.
Oh yeah. And I mean, absolutely. The thing is, um, money, money is we need money. We
Mm-hmm.
need money. Money answers all things. However, money could be also dangerous depending on how you use it. Money could cause you to become very greedy.
Mm-hmm.
Money, the love of money could cause you to become not confident, not content with what you have, and all these things could put pressure in life, and you end up becoming depressed because you've not gotten what you have done or you had, and you mess up. So all this can affect you mentally.
Mm-hmm. Or equally, that love of money and the way money is used can cause you to also oppress other people.
Absolutely. Exactly.
Which then too, because there's that standpoint of how that also then affects future generations in that aspect of dealing with somebody who might be lording money over others, which then it helps attack that sense of self-esteem as well.
It does, and because of it, it also causes people to get in trouble because of what it is doing to people. It may enable people to go about stealing other people's money so they can get
Mm-hmm.
it, or other people things so they can make money.
Mm-hmm.
So all of that
Mm-hmm.
can have that impact as well on other people as well
Mm-hmm.
because they believe
Oh,
that is the solution.
right.
Yeah.
Which is one of the things we see too with the some of the pyramid schemes we that
Oh
are
boy.
often that are often danced across and showing up in our emails and such, and
Yeah.
you're seeing on Instagram and such. So it's just like that aspect of chasing the money.
I know, and unfortunately, some people are very gullible. It's because these pyramid schemes sound so good. It's very
Mm-hmm.
tempting, and they fall for it, and
Mm-hmm.
they end up losing so much.
Exactly, which comes back to that aspect of what is this sense of relationship, not just with money, but also with themselves, to feel that, oh, they have to go for or feel like they can be susceptible to these quick fixes.
Yeah.
And there are at least 9 billion people on this planet.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea that there's always going to be a quick fix is something that doesn't seem to pan out the way everyone thinks it is.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I always tell people, if it sounds too good, then something is off.
Mm-hmm.
Someone they're going to give you 10% return every month. That doesn't add up. There's no way.
Well, especially given the fact that seems like that's an equation that's sitting in isolation.
Yes.
And we don't live in isolation. We're
Absolutely.
constantly influencing by things that are both obvious and not so obvious. So if you're not also calculating for certain constants about resources, or the fact that you're always going to constantly need something else, how does that factor into the equation?
Repeat that question. How does
Well, it's sort of a rhetorical question for people to think about, because whenever I often hear too, it's like talking about this mathematical equation, especially when it comes to business. It seems like it's always sitting in an isolation, that it's always going to have that constant growth. But nature does not function with constant growth.
Yeah.
It has growth, starts and stops, or at least slowdowns.
Yeah.
And that calculation that says constant growth is sitting in isolation from things such as resources, or even natural disasters, or as we've seen with the global supply chain issues, war, or even disease.
Mm-hmm.
But that constant growth can't work that way, and it's that hunt for perfection.
Yeah, absolutely. And with what you just said, and we need to remember, that everything doesn't last forever.
Mm-hmm.
There are seasons, and there are seasons, just like you have 4 seasons in America. There are seasons in the economy, and so you have to be conscious of that, and don't become too emotional or get caught up in the moment making decisions based on emotion.
And even then, as you said, they're making decisions based off emotions, and emotions don't also last forever unless we've specifically made sure that we're keeping ourselves in that place. And what much energy needs to be spent to keep ourselves in that place, whether it is that idea of happiness, but more frequently, the place of sadness, depression, and anger. There's a lot of energy that goes into that, which is also energy that takes away from, dealing with the money issues. Oh,
yeah, absolutely. I mean, that you could use that energy, the energy you spend on sadness and depression. That energy you should be able to use the energy on joy and happiness.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I'm curious, how did you use that energy of joy and happiness to build some of the things for yourself?
It took me a while. After many, because I had a lot of energy negatively, So it took me a while. And I always tell people the support of my wife, particularly, really woke me up. And she keeps saying Drexwell, and even though she encouraged me many years, but then suddenly a light bulb went off. And then when I realized what is she saying, how important I am, and nobody's better than me. And then I was able to reverse that negative energy into positive by pouring joy in people's lives and pouring hope into people's lives through my writings of articles and through my shows, and making a difference in people's lives. So I was able to go from one extreme to the next, basically for the support of and love of my wife.
Which is a shift in the money still has its importance, but it's not the most important thing.
No,
as it was. It's finding these other energy places, these other aspects, which is reorganizing that priority list, but also operating with an entirely different currency base.
Yeah, and then money will eventually come anyway. I feel, especially you pursuing something that you are passionate about, because you're going to put your all in it. And eventually, I believe you'll find returns on whatever you do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So is that part of what got you into college at 16?
Well, that was I don't know how to describe that one, because I didn't even know I was going to go to college, because of course I came from a family who didn't have much. And so the scholarship came about with this gentleman who's a tourist to Turks and Caicos, and he went to the school in Ohio, and he left some funds there. And so I took the risk and I applied. Not the risk, I just applied, not even thinking I was going to get it. And so that's what I did. So that it just happened to happen at that time. And I don't believe it was a coincidence. I believe it was intended by God, because he knew my family couldn't to send me to college, and he opened the hearts of someone else. And so that's how I ended up doing it.
And working with that leap of faith in the standpoint that, yeah, there are other currencies out there that could help you.
Yes.
And that would be one of your relationship with God. So, and that's something too, where we have to be conscious of how that's being put forth. Because I mean, we also have the problems of prosperity theology, and that's also keeping people in, sadly, their poverty too.
Oh, unfortunately, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, we're not going to touch too much of that one, because that's not where we're going here with it. But the sense of our mental health as well, because as I said, how we use money is something that reflects in our relationship with it. So, and our self-esteem, such as living in poverty, but ensuring that you've got Coco Chanel and Louis Vuitton, and yet you're still struggling to pay the electric bill. Or the aspect of you've got the money to buy those things, but you are so caught up in the idea of losing it that you're basically maybe not even going to the doctor when you need to, because of losing the money for your health.
Yeah.
And that's also part of what we get, that I think is also an element that interplays with the literature, the money literature that you're focusing on.
Yeah.
What is that relationship? And now you mentioned in your bio was the aspect of dealing with colorism. And I'm curious, what were the messages and lessons that were sort of offered around colorism and money?
That's interesting. Okay, so of course, not just in the Caribbean, I think many places where, you know, your dark skin, you experience discrimination among your own race. And of course, the only thing is, though, if you are very dark, but you have money, and you're treated differently. That's what I experienced.
Can you give people a sense of what that being treated different was like?
Well, if you don't have any money, no one really cares for you. Even getting a relationship with a girl, that's a challenge. But if you have money, if you have a vehicle, then it's like you get anything you want. And so that's the relationship between the colorism and the finances from that point of view that I take.
Which comes back to an idea is like, oh, you can provide these things for me, but I don't actually have to know you as a person. I don't have to care about you as a person. I don't have to be concerned about your well-being, other than you're still bringing in the money.
Yeah. Basically, you're being used to, but of course, some people don't mind being used as long as they get what they want,
Which in itself becomes another transactional relationship.
Yeah.
As opposed to the other currency we were talking about that connection of well-being, connection to community, connection to family.
Yes.
So, and I'm thinking, I also think about that this is a larger issue we have in the diaspora as well, about this relationship and our relationship with money, especially considering we were used as currency and commodity for a point of time as well.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
And I'm kind of curious then, how has that presence still been felt in the Caribbean as well?
Well, it is. It still felt that way to a certain extent. I think there's been a major improvement because a lot of people in the Caribbean now they're now more exposed, they are now more educated, they have a lot of businesses, and they realize they don't have to depend on other people to get where they want, because in the past you'll find people kissing up to persons of different color, or trying to fit in, trying to get the money that they need, and just trying to fit in. And so they still have, some of them still have this mental slavery, trying to, please people. But things have improved now. Even for me, I suffer from that, but now I'm in a better shape, and I know who I am. So there's been a major improvement, but there's still some people that have that mental slavery in terms of not believing who they are, and believing that other people are better than them, and thinking that because you're dark, you don't have any money, and that only white people have money. They still believe that. And so, however, that is changing.
And in addition to that, idea is not having to understand how money functions and works, and what are the options that come with money as well.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. All of that's at play in our sense of the mental health around money and that relationship, because it's a relationship.
It is.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So to that end, I'm curious then, how do you encourage others to move from beyond that? I mean, you have your book and so forth, but give us a sort of a ballpark idea about what that looks like when talking to others.
Well, I think one of the things that people need to do, what I do and encourage people have to believe that they have a purpose, right? That they are not a mistake, that they have to believe in themselves, and they have to stop, comparing themselves to other people. They have to stop measuring success just by the amount of money in the bank, or by having a college degree. Those are the things that I encourage people from that point of view. I think people need to establish goals. And if you achieve those goals, you are successful. And so that's what I try to tell people: to establish your goals. Take. If you have several goals, try to do one or two, get it done, move on to the next one, and you've achieved something.
Well, and it sounds like make sure these goals are actually obtainable as opposed to unobtainable.
Yes.
So figuring it's like, oh yeah, I want to have a yacht in 6 weeks is not as obtainable as making sure I've gotten.
You have to be realistic.
That I've been able to have a nice dinner at this restaurant in 6 weeks worth of time. Yeah. And to that end, I'm then wondering, what have you encountered and experienced when dealing with parts of our diaspora and that sense of going for those pie in the sky dreams? What do you think has been helping fuel that need for that?
Well, I mean, when you realize that you can achieve anything you want, and I think it motivates you to pursue it. And then when you see other people, especially people when you're raised doing so well, it propels you to do the same thing as well. And I think that, and because the thing is, there are a lot of opportunities, and the opportunities just need to be fulfilled. And you see all these opportunities, especially here in the Turks and Caicos, there are a lot of opportunities. And so you see these opportunities, you need to go for it. And I think that's what we need to drive ahead. And the opportunities also be linked to your goals. So now there's a need. Now everybody now wants to get a part of that pie that's out there, this big pie. You know, and people want to get that pie. And one thing I realized that people can easily be influenced. So you do something and it looks good and it's working good, then other people want to do the same thing as well. And that's why it's important whatever we do to do something in a positive way, because you're influencing other people. Because there's so much negativity going on. You have all these gangs and all these crimes and war. But if we could do something positive, it could eliminate a lot of the negativity that's taking place in the world. Because a lot of people will be attracted to what you're doing, and they want to do the same thing as well.
Yeah, because as you were talking about that, I think about I think it was last week, I had another of the Instagram cryptocurrency people popping into one of my feeds, and it's like, okay, yeah, block, delete. Yeah. And you're standing there showing off this money, you're showing off these pieces of jewelry in the car, and it's like, yeah, but what did you actually have to do to get that? And is part of what you can, at least in this person, is about influencing me to spend my money, and you're whatever you take from that, versus actually doing that work for yourself.
That's it.
Yeah. Although I think that's the more overt influence. I'm kind of curious then, what do you think was the covert influence of what you grew up in and the messages around money in your family?
Well, I mean, growing up, of course, most people in my town, in my country, most people didn't have any money. They didn't have any money. I mean, of course, I will say this though: what they did do is that they were entrepreneurs. Like my mom made bread. My mom made she sold ice. She did different things to make money, because she knew we needed money to survive. And so a lot of people were entrepreneurs, but at that time they didn't know that was entrepreneurship. That was years ago. So money was very important then, and money is very important now. And so that's the kind of overt thing I think that took place. They took it upon themselves and try, because it's limited jobs. So what they did, they became their own business owners, took upon themselves to make the money. And so because of that, many other children now and grandchildren are following the legacy of their parents by becoming entrepreneurs. It wasn't told that we have to do it. We saw what happened from our parents and grandparents, and then we started doing it, and then it passed on from generation to generation.
So it's another form of what we could say is in generational wealth too. Not just the physical wealth, but this sense and drive to move forward.
Yes.
And that came from what the relationship within your family was about money.
Yes.
Very much so. Okay, I think that's a great place for us to take a pause here. And we'll come back for our second half here on Untying Knots, Minds and Souls Untethered. I'm Perry Clark, licensed marriage and family therapist, here with Drexwell Seymour, the accountant, CPA, and businessman. So stay tuned, folks. We'll be back shortly.
Follow Voice America at facebook.com/Voice America for juicy updates from your favorite radio shows and podcasts.
Our lives and the world around us can get messy and frustrating. Untangle and Grow Counseling's focus is to untangle that mess and make sense of it, so you have a good foundation to build and grow from. Visit us on the web at untangleandgrowcounseling.com. Perry Clark offers individual psychotherapy, couples and family therapy, and adolescence therapy from a variety of coping materials and resources. Visit untangleandgrowcounseling.com for more information.
You have the power to be stronger, live fearlessly, and enjoy the benefits of a great life. Listen for Fearlessly Authentic with host Jody Harrison Bauer. Jody has proven at an age when many start to slow down that she is just getting started. With 2 grown daughters, a successful business that she started at 50, a finalist in the Sports Illustrated swimsuit issue, and a 2-time world bikini champion, she's ready to take you to the next level in your life. Fearlessly Authentic airs Thursdays at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, 1 p.m. Pacific Time on Voice America Empowerment.
We're on Facebook, along with some of the greatest minds of the world, and that includes you. Visit us on Facebook at Voice America Empowerment.
You are listening to Untying Knots, Minds and Souls Untethered. If you have a question or comment about our podcast, send an email to pclark@untyingknotspodcast.com. That's pclark@untyingknotspodcast.com. And now, back to the program.
Hello, folks. Welcome back to Untying Knots, Minds and Souls Untethered. I'm Perry Clark, licensed marriage and family therapist, here with Drexwell Seymour, a CPA and entrepreneur. And we've been talking about the aspects of money, our money literacy, our money relationship. And we touched briefly on the aspect of health. And I'm sort of curious, because in our previous setup for this meeting, we did talk about some health concerns that you hit and you encountered, which then also affected this issue of how did you use your money with your literacy and what emotions were going on with your relationship with money. So let's talk a bit about that.
Sure. Now, first of all, I believe it's very important that everybody take their health seriously.
Mm-hmm.
We cannot, take that for granted. So, in one way we could do that is by getting, regular checkups at least twice a year. I encourage people to do that because you may find yourself in a position where your health is so bad that you can't even work anymore to make the money that you wanted to have, or you'll be limited in what you do, or you might be confined to a bed. So it's important. I mean, for almost 6.5 years now, I have been on dialysis, and it has affected me in terms of many things. Actually, I don't travel much. I love traveling, but because I have to go get treatments wherever I go, I don't travel. And then, of course, with my business, I have to meet clients. So when I'm on dialysis, I can't meet my clients. But I do work while I'm on dialysis. I take my laptop with me. And the very first year, it was rough on me, and I was learning to define who I am. But now I reach a point where I'm not letting my health situation define me. I'm still doing things the same way I did prior to dialysis. Now I'm okay now, but it can be very hard with having a health issue, trying to manage and even trying to manage your mind, because I became depressed when I was first to have to go on dialysis. I was embarrassed. It bothered me. I started thinking the worst. And now I'm okay. Now I'm talking to people about it. I'm open about it now. And maybe it was a way to slow me down because I was really, really moving fast. And so now I'm okay about it. But I just want to encourage people. You could avoid certain health issues if, depending on your diet. Obviously, you need to make sure you exercise, you need to make sure you rest. And so that's very, very critical for survival, for good survival in your life.
Right. And as you talked about the fact that you found yourself depressed and when it became realized you had to go on dialysis, I'm kind of curious then, how did your interaction with money in that period show up? Because this is, again, that interplay between where we're thinking about ourselves and how we're using money.
Yeah, yes, I was depressed, but it affected me because I have my own business. And so I realized that I couldn't do the things I could have done before because I wasn't physically able to do it because I had to spend 4 hours 3 times a week at the hospital. And now it didn't affect me financially because what I did, I made sure, recruit people for my company who could do the job. So in the event I have to go away or I cannot go to work, the job will continue, and I can still have that money. Now, of course, some people are not in the same position I'm in. They are employees, and so they are affected because some employers are not giving them all that time off to do dialysis.
Right.
But for me, because I'm self-employed, it didn't affect me that much. But I know of people that it did affect people with their money because it reduced their income. They had to stay home. Some had to spend more time at home. They were so tired after dialysis they couldn't go to work, and so it did affect some people. But it didn't affect me.
Which is another example of dealing with a different aspect of generational wealth, is how quickly things like our health situations can remove the wealth that we were building for our families.
Oh yeah, in an instant.
So preparing basically a health plan for illness is something that probably should be things we should be considering, let alone the idea that, and I know something that's sort of lingering with my own immediate family, is whether or not a piece of property is going to have to be sold to continue to provide the living and health expenses for another family member, which, again, we know property can be part of this generational wealth in helping pull us out of the idea of poverty. But at that point, by not preparing for these potential aspects of growing older, dealing with our health, we're still doing that goal of the wealth gap by not being prepared for these things.
That is true. It's a big issue. It's a big concern. So what I would even tell people, especially in terms of your property, if you have a big piece of land, what I really recommend to people is to mutate it, make it into smaller parts, and if you need the cash, because of health issues or whatever issue you have, just sell a portion. Don't sell the entire property. Mutate it, sell part of it. To help with your health issues.
Well, what about doing things like trusts and such, so that it doesn't necessarily get tied into your health estate and so forth? Because I know that's one.
Yes, because I know that's another option that you can put in trust. Yes, you can.
Yeah, because that's one of the things.
There might be times when you really need the money, and so you have no choice but to sell a portion, especially if you're not working.
Yeah, because I know, as I said, the sort of family issue, looking at for myself here with another family member, is the possibility is that we still might have, even if we don't get things resolved, the health insurance, this will come after the estate after they've passed, and we may still lose the land no matter what we do. So it's trying to have those type of things, and that's, I think, is one of the areas you cover in your book.
Yes.
Okay. And tell me a little more about the book and what people can expect to find as they go through it. Obviously, now this discussion about estate planning and such.
Yeah. So, by the way, I have 2 books now. So, so my first book is Rise Up and Take Your Position. It's a motivational book to encourage people to basically get up from where they are, so they could get to where they're supposed to be. And so in the book, I have different areas that will help them to consider and to encourage them to rise up. And I know a lot of times, people may encounter obstacles like failures, whether you have a failed relationship, whether you have a failed business or failed career. And some people might get so caught up in that failure and not even using it as an opportunity. So all that is in the book. Look at failures as opportunities. And we also, another obstacle is the fear. We are so afraid. We're just afraid. We are happy or comfortable with what we're doing now because we know what we have, but we don't know what we will have. And so we're going to take that leap of faith. And this book is to tell you not to be afraid. Fear is one of the greatest obstacles. And this book is to encourage you to get over the fear so that you can have the faith to get to your destination. And then my second book is a sequel to this book. It's called Succeed in Your Position. Basically, once you now gone into the position that you're supposed to be in, you now need to succeed. And so the second book has 10 steps on how you can succeed in your position. Of course, there are many, many steps. There are hundreds, but I chose the top 10 on how, some of those is working hard, some of them is being honest. Those are some of the steps. So it's a guide to, because too many people are getting into positions and they're not successful because they're not applying some basic principles. And that's what those two books are about.
Well, also one of the big ones that I hear from the therapy side is also being conscious about what and how you're using money to identify yourself. And that it is going to be a part of the equation, shall we say, or part of the segment of who you are, but it doesn't need to be all of who you are.
No, it doesn't have to. And it's not, it's not all of who you are.
Because all
I do have a section on money in the book. I do have a section on money in the second book. Yeah. Perfect.
Well, I think that's a great place for us to segue into our other aspect here of and since we're talking about health, and you've been so candid about your struggle with ALS, I'm kind of curious about what do you, especially with your exposure to what life is like in the Caribbean region, as opposed to some of the other regions of the world, what do you think are some of the myths and realities around mental health as part of the diaspora and speaking to life in the Caribbean region?
Yeah. We really need to, I know May is the month of mental health awareness, and we focus a lot in May to educate the public, but we really need to educate the public about mental health. I believe that everybody has an issue. But we think of mental health in such a negative way that it drives a point where individuals are afraid to even seek help because they don't want to be labeled as being, crazy or abnormal. I mean, we all go through issues. That are mental. Being depressed can be a mental issue. Worrying a mental issue. You know what I mean? Just thinking about, these are mental issues that we all encounter. Of course, the different, extremes of mental illness and mental issues, but we are too negative about it, and it can happen to any one of us. I've seen people who are very rich, mental issues, who are very poor. It's not just it doesn't discriminate. And that is something we need to appreciate people and realize too, that some people cannot help the way they are. But they can help, they could get help, professional help. But some people can wake up one day and say, I am the way I am. You know what I mean? Some people have a lot of different issues that they went through in life. Some people inherit some things in life. And so there's a lot of myths about mental, and I think it's important for us to continue to educate the public about it and realize it could happen to any one of us, and that in our family, and that every one of us have an issue in our lives.
Yeah. Just because you have money does not mean you can't also have bad mental health.
Yeah.
It just means you may have access to different resources, but does not mean mental health will not strike you as well.
Yeah.
And from your exposure, do you see the relationship with mental health changing from where it was with our parents or grandparents and our great grandparents?
Oh, it's changing a lot. It's changing a lot. I mean, our great grandparents, back then they called everybody crazy. Nobody was getting help. They just write you off. But now we have therapists, we have departments, we have the Department of Mental Substance and Department of Mental Health, sorry. They're now established. We have private facilities. So now people have access to therapy. Now, in our parents' and grandparents' time, it wasn't that way. It wasn't available. And so there's a lot of progress. And people are studying. There are a lot of people going away to school, studying psychology and physiotherapy, whatever, not physiotherapy, psychotherapy. And they are understanding more. They're coming back and training in people so they can be better and be more productive in society. So it's much better.
And equally, it does not mean you cannot also have your relationship with God.
Right. I mean, I have a relationship with God and I have dialysis. So,
you have a relationship with God and you have a relationship with your therapist.
Yeah, I have kidney failure and I have a relationship with God. So I have a relationship with God and still have mental issues. Yeah.
And you're not crazy.
No. Yeah.
So I will definitely want people to think about that and realize it. But again, can lead a horse to water, but you can't get them to drink. So let's hope that after our discussion, people will be more open to drink from the idea, not just of mental health, but also what their relationship with money is. And definitely look at your book and look at the other books and materials out there about financial literacy.
Yes.
So Drexwell, I want to thank you for coming on and being part of our show. And where can people find you if they want to definitely read these books and for this motivation?
Sure. So my books are on Amazon. The 2 books are there. And of course, I have my own website, www.drexwellseymour.com. And I also have a YouTube, just Drexwell Seymour, and you can find me there.
All right. And I'll have those notes in the podcast section as well. So thank you again for taking this time and be well out there.
Thank you. And I appreciate the opportunity to be on the show.
Likewise. And you be well too, folks. And be aware of what your money literacy is, and make sure also look at what your relationship is with money, whether it is tripping with you through the fields or is it hitting you with a whip, which because we don't want the whip. We just really don't. So until next time, you're on Untying Knots, Minds and Souls Untethered on the Voice America Network. Be well.
Thank you for tuning in for Untying Knots, Minds and Souls Untethered. Be sure to join your host, Perry Clark, for another episode on the podcast coming soon on the Voice America Empowerment Channel.